She stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of her neatly pressed blazers, confident, radiated from her posture, even though her heart beat faster than usual. Today was important. Her first real interview at the company she had dreamed of joining. Her name was Alina. She believed in preparation. Every detail mattered. Her outfit, her words, her composure. She chose a simple yet elegant dress, paired with low heels, professional, but still true to herself. As she looked at her reflection one last time, she whispered, "You've got this." The interview room was colder than she expected, but she carried her warmth with her. She spoke clearly, answered thoughtfully, and smiled when it mattered. The panel exchanged glance, not of doubt, but of quiet approval. By the time she walked out, she already knew. A week later, the email arrived. "Congratulations, Alina. We are pleased to offer you the position." Her joy was immeasurable. She celebrated quietly, holding her phone close as if the world might disappear. It was the beginning she had worked so hard for. The first week at the company was everything she imagined. Fast-paced, challenging, exciting. She learned quickly, stayed late when needed, and gave more than what she asked of her. Her colleagues noticed, her manager appreciated her dedication. But beneath the excitement, something slowly began to wane on her. The city was expensive, more than she had planned for. Rent, transportation, food, every expense chipped away at her saving. She cut back where she could, skip some luxuries, and tried to stay optimized. "It's temporary," she told herself. But reality doesn't always wait. By the end of the third month, the numbers no longer made sense. No matter how hard she worked, the cost of staying was higher than what she earned. One evening, sitting alone in her small apartment, she stared at her budget sheet. The truth was unavoidable. She couldn't afford to stay. The next morning, she walked into the office with the same confidence she had carried on her first day, but this time it felt heavier. When she handed in her resignation letter, her manager looked surprised. "You are doing so well here," he said. She smiled softly. Sometimes, doing well isn't enough. Walking out of the building, for the last time, she felt a mix of disappointment and determination. She had lost something important, but she had gained something even more valuable, a lesson. And somewhere deep inside her, a quiet thought began to grow. What if I built something of my own? That question would soon change everything. The day after leaving the company felt unusually quiet. For the first time in months, Alina woke up without an alarm, without deadlines, without somewhere she had to be. But instead of comfort, the silence brought uncertainty. Had she made the right decision? She pushed the thought aside. Regret wouldn't move her forward. Instead, she returned to the question that had followed her since that last day. What if I built something of my own? At first, the idea felt too big, almost unrealistic. She had no investor, no office, no team, just a small amount of savings, a notebook full of ideas, and a determination that refused to fade. So she started small, very small. She turned the corner of her tiny apartment into a workspace, a simple desk, a laptop, and a chair that wasn't nearly as comfortable as she wished. But it was hers. Every morning she sat there with a plan: learn, build, try. Alina had always been observant. During her time at the company, she noticed gaps, things people needed, but no one was providing well. She decided to focus on one of those gaps, something practical, something she understood. Her first attempt wasn't perfect. In fact, it failed. The first product she created didn't attract customers. The second idea barely gained attention. She faced rejections, emails, unanswered messages, and days when nothing seems to work. There were moments she questioned everything. "Maybe this isn't for me," she whispered one night, staring at her screen, after hours of effort that led nowhere. But then she remembered something important. She had already faced failure. She survived it. So instead of quitting, she adjusted. She listened more carefully to people's need. She improved her skills, watched tutorials late into the night, and wasn't afraid to start over. When some things didn't work, slowly she began to understand that success wasn't about getting it right the first time. It was about not stopping. Weeks turned into months. One day, something different happened. A message appeared in her inbox. Hi, I came across your work. I really like what you are doing. Can I place an order? Alina read it twice, just to be sure. It wasn't a big order. It wasn't life changing, but it was real. Her first customer. She smiled, not because of the money, but because of what it meant. Someone believed in what she created. And that was enough to keep going. From that single order, another followed, then another. A small idea, once uncertain and fragile, began to grow slowly, quietly, but steadily. Alina no longer measured success by how fast things happened. She measured it by her progress. And for the first time since she left her job, she felt something stronger than fear. She felt momentum. Momentum was a beautiful thing, but it came with a price. What started as a single order soon turned into multiple requests. Alina found herself waking up early and sleeping later, trying to keep up with the growing demand. Her small desk, once enough, now felt crowded with notes, tools, and unfinished tasks. At first, at first, she loved the business. It made her feel alive, needed, purposeful. But as the day passed, the pressure began to build. She was no longer just creating, she was managing everything. Customers' message, order, finances, marketing, delivery, everything. Every decision rested on her shoulder, and there was no one to share the weight with. One evening, after working nearly 16 hours straight, she sat back in her chair, exhausted. Her hand ached, her eyes burned, and her mind refused to slow down. Is this what I wanted? She asked herself quietly. Growth has brought her opportunity, but also responsibility. A missed deadline, a delayed response there. Small mistakes begin to appear. One customer complained, another cancelled an order. The excitement she once felt started to mix with anxiety. For a moment, fear returned. Not the fear of failure, but the fear of losing what she had built. That night, instead of pushing herself harder, Alina did something different. She stopped. She took a deep breath and looked at everything. Not emotionally, but honestly. I can't do this alone, she admitted. It wasn't weakness, it was clarity. The next day, she made her first big decision as a business owner. She asked for help. It wasn't easy hiring someone, even part-time, felt risky. Money was not still tight, and trust wasn't something she gave easily. But she knew that if she wanted to grow, she had to let go of doing everything herself. Her first hire wasn't perfect, but neither was she. They made mistakes together, learned together, and slowly things began to stabilize. Tasks became more organized, deadlines were met, customers were happier, and for the first time in a long while, Helena felt balance returning. With more time to think, she started improving her business, not just running it. She refined her product, strengthened her brand, and found smarter ways to reach people. What once felt like survival began to feel like strategy. Months passed, and a small operation no longer looked so small. People started recognizing her work. Her name began to circulate. Opportunities appeared, collaborations, partnership, bigger orders. One afternoon, while reviewing her progress, she paused. This was no longer just an idea born out of necessity. This was becoming something real, something strong. But deep down, she knows this was only the beginning because growth doesn't stop, it evolves. And the next stage would demand even more from her than she ever imagined. Success did not come with noise. It came quietly through recognition, through trust, through the steady increase of people choosing her over others. Alina's business was no longer just growing, it was being noticed. A major breakthrough came one morning when she received an email that looked different from the rest. It wasn't a simple order or a small inquiry. It was from a well-known company in the city, interested in a large-scale collaboration. Alina read the email carefully, her heart racing. This was it, the opportunity she was unknowingly being prepared for. But with excitement came doubt. Am I ready for this? She asked herself. The project was bigger than anything she had handled before. It required more resources, tighter deadlines, and a level of consistency she had never been tested on. For a moment, fear whispered the same old question, what if you fail? But this time, something inside her answered back, what if you don't try? She accepted the offer. From that moment, everything accelerated. Her small team had to expand quickly. More people joined, systems had to be created, and processes had to be improved almost overnight. There was no time for hesitation, only action. The prayer was instant. Deadlines approached, faster than expected. Small errors felt bigger. Every decision carried weight, not just for her, but for everyone who now depended on the business. 1 week before the final delivery, something went wrong. A critical part of the project fell behind schedule. A supplier delayed. A key task wasn't completed as planned. The entire deadline was suddenly at risk. Panic would have taken over, but Alina has changed. Instead of reacting with fear, she focused on solution. She gathered her team, spoke clearly and reassigned responsibilities. She worked alongside them, not above them. Late into the night, every hour counted. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, exhaustion, and frustration, but this time she wasn't alone, and that made all the difference. Finally, the deadline arrived. The delivery was made, and then silence. Hours passed before the response came. When it did, it was simple. Excellent work. We would like to continue working with you. Helena crossed her eyes for a moment, letting the word settle in. They had done it, not perfectly but successfully. That project became a turning point. It brought credibility, visibility, and more opportunities than she had ever imagined. Her business was no longer just growing within small circles, it was becoming a recognized name in the city. But more importantly, Alina realized something deeper. Success wasn't about avoiding problems, it was about facing them, adapting, and moving forward anyways. She had started with nothing but an idea and determination. Now she had built something that could stand on its own. And yet, as she looked ahead, she knew the journey wasn't over because the final step wasn't just about success, it was about legacy. Years passed, but Alina never forgot where she started. What began as a small desk in the corner of her apartment had now grown into a full company, an office filled with people, ideas, and purpose. The same city that once felt too expensive to survive in had now become the place where she thrived. Her company was no longer just recognized, it was respected. Clients didn't just come for a product or services, they came for the reliability, the quality, and the story. Capable group, each person playing a role in something much bigger than themselves. And then one day it happened. At the major business event in the city, our company was announced as one of the best. For a moment, the room faded. Applause filled the air, but Alina stood still, reflecting not on the award, but on the journey that led her there. She remembered the interview, the excitement of getting the job, the quiet struggle of not being able to afford the stay, the painful decision to walk away. She remembered the failure, the sleepless night, the uncertainty, the first small order, the overwhelming growth, and the moment she almost gave up. None of this was wasted. Every setback had shaped her. Every challenge had taught her something she could never have learnt otherwise. When she stepped onto the stage to accept the recognition, she didn't speak about the success in the way people expected. She said, this didn't start with a perfect plan. It started with a problem I couldn't ignore, and the decision to keep going even when it was hard. The room grew quiet. Sometimes, she continued, what feels like the end is actually the beginning. I lost a job I thought I needed. But in doing so, I found something I was meant to build. Her words weren't just for the audience, they were for the person she used to be. After the event, as she walked outside into the cold evening air, she looked up at the city skyline. The same building, the same street, but everything felt different now. Not because the city had changed, but because she had. Success, she realized, wasn't just about becoming the best in the city. It was about becoming the best version of yourself through every challenge, every failure, and every step forward. And as she smiled to herself, one thought stayed with her. This was never just about building a business, it was about building a life. Kindly like, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. Thank you.